It was a morning like no other. The streets lay silent, muffled under a blanket of frost that seemed to cling to every doorstep, every fence, every bare branch. Your breath hung in the air like smoke, and the usual hum of life, the milk float, the early chatter of neighbors, was absent. People stepped outside, shoes crunching on ice, and simply stared, bewildered. Something had arrived that most of us had never seen before, a cold so relentless it seemed to pause the world. And yet, this was only the beginning, a winter that would quietly reshape the rhythm of everyday British life. To understand why this winter felt so extraordinary, we need to step back into post-war Britain. The country was still finding its footing after years of rationing, austerity, and rebuilding. Many homes were drafty, with single-glass windows and minimal insulation, and central heating was a luxury for the few. Life moved according to the daylight, the weather, and the simple rhythms of daily chores, collecting coal, hanging, washing, or tending small gardens. People were accustomed to cold snaps, yes, but nothing like what was coming. When the frost settled, it was more than a nuisance. It was a disruption to the familiar patterns of life. Pipes froze, rivers stiffened with ice, and roads became treacherous. The sudden stillness, the eerie hush over towns and villages, caught everyone off guard. Even the most prepared families found themselves improvising in ways they never imagined. Shops stocked for ordinary winter days were suddenly inadequate. This wasn't just a cold winter. It was an experience that challenged the very routines people relied upon. The shock wasn't only physical, it was emotional. People realized how fragile life's ordinary comforts could be, and it made every frozen morning feel remarkable. By the time they stepped outside, they knew they were witnessing something historic. As the frost lingered day after day, life slowed to a new, unfamiliar rhythm. Milk bottles left on doorsteps would freeze solid, their creamy contents locked in a temporary winter sculpture. Washing lines sagged under layers of ice, and clothes stiffened as if the cold itself had pressed them. Streets that once echoed with children's laughter and the chatter of neighbors became eerily quiet. The usual hum of daily life replaced by the crunch of boots on ice. Even the school run transformed into a delicate negotiation with frozen paths and bitter wind. Some schools delayed opening, others improvised with indoor games, and every family found themselves making small but meaningful adjustments. At home, warmth was a precious commodity. Layer upon layer of clothing became routine woolen vests, thick cardigans, scarves tucked under collars. Families gathered together in the smallest rooms, sharing body heat, huddling over simple meals prepared on stoves that seemed to work overtime against the chill. Meals were hearty, comforting, and sometimes repetitive, but they offered more than nutrition. They offered reassurance. Neighbors helped one another carry coal, fetch water, or simply check in, fostering a quiet sense of community. Every ordinary task carried new significance. Walking to the corner shop, posting a letter, or even opening a window required thought and care. These were small reminders of how resilient people could be when faced with an unexpected challenge. And yet, for all the hardship, there was a strange beauty in these frozen streets and frost-covered gardens, a stillness that made everyday life feel extraordinary. It was a winter that made Britain pause, notice, and adapt, leaving memories that would linger for decades. Some moments from that winter still feel almost impossible to imagine. Rivers froze in unusual stretches, their surfaces solid enough to reflect the pale winter sun like glass, and ponds became miniature mirrors for the stark, leafless trees. Streets that normally teemed with buses and bicycles were deserted, with transport services slowed to a crawl or stopped entirely. People who had relied on familiar routes found themselves detouring through quiet. Icy lanes discovering corners of their towns they had never noticed before. Even familiar landmarks seemed transformed. Town squares glistened with frost, playgrounds stood empty beneath sparkling ice, and once bustling parks were now still, silent, and breathtakingly beautiful. Shops opened later, deliveries lagged, and communities adapted with quiet ingenuity, neighbors helping carry groceries, sharing coal, or simply checking in with each other. For anyone alive at the time, these were ordinary days turned extraordinary. Today, with weather apps, heated homes, and constant transport updates, it's hard to imagine such widespread disruption from a few weeks of frost. Back then, it felt like the world had been paused, giving people the rare chance to see life through a frozen lens. You really had to live it to believe it, and it's something most of us have carried in memory ever since, quietly remarkable in its scale and impact. In the deepest weeks of that relentless cold, a quiet sense of togetherness emerged. Neighbors who might have only exchanged brief greetings now checked in daily, carrying coal, lending a kettle, or sharing a simple meal. Streets, once defined by individual routines, became communal spaces where small acts of kindness carried immense weight. Children played carefully in the icy gardens, watched over by neighbors who had become an extended family in those frozen days. The cold demanded cooperation, and people rose to the occasion without fanfare. Simple gestures, a shared stove, a borrowed blanket, a helping hand with frozen pipes, created bonds that lingered long after the frost melted. It was a reminder of a distinctly British resilience, a steady calm in the face of hardship, where ordinary people quietly carried each other through adversity. That winter wasn't just cold, it was a season that reminded everyone what community could truly mean. Looking back, it's striking to see how differently we experience winter now. Central heating, weather forecasts, and instant updates have removed much of the uncertainty that once shaped daily life. Yet in that comfort, we've lost something subtle. The shared awareness of weather's power, the quiet ingenuity, and the neighborly care that frost demanded. That winter remains a reminder of resilience, connection, and the simple ways life was felt more deeply. Remembering it invites us to cherish both the past and the present, and perhaps to share our own memories of a Britain that, frozen or not, felt profoundly alive.